we will call to order the regular monthly meeting of the City of Helotes Planning and Zoning Commission. It is May the 7th at 7 p.m. Commission Secretary can call the roll, please.
Greg Michelle.
Here.
Jason Wetman.
Here.
Ron Haza. Joe Edmond.
Here.
Richard Hawk.
Here.
Jeff Wade.
Here.
Mike McLaughlin.
Here.
Mario Rios.
Here.
And we have Susan Darst and Rick Schroeder from city staff, Alex Blue from council with us tonight. There are no citizens to be heard, so we'll move to our first item, which is the report from the council liaison, Councilman Blue, to report on the items that were acted on upon council from the April P&Z meeting.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The City Council acted upon 3 items that had previously come to this commission. The first item, and these are all, of course, in your agenda there, but the first item was the final subdivision plat for Brycewood subdivision, which this commission recommended approval as presented, and council passed that in the same manner as presented. The second item was a request by Parker & Parker Investment Properties. This is the scenic loop property. The Planning and Zoning recommended requiring wainscot be around the entirety of the building, and also recommended that the lighting be either on timers or on some method of shutoff. As you may recall from the Planning and Zoning meeting, the owner was present and was very cooperative in such. The City Council, when they came to council, they made some pledges as well, and so the council did not require the wainscot on the backside because of additional information regarding the backside of the property and the brush and the blocking of the view and no access from the backside of the property. So that part wasn't made a requirement. The lighting, the mayor indicated that because the lighting all met the full cutoff requirement, we could not add a requirement to force them to timers, et cetera. However, the owner was very amenable to that and would look into that, they indicated. So it basically was passed as approved. One additional concern was brought up at the meeting, but not required mandatory, was the front awning cover was a concern, but again, our mayor indicated that we were not able to force them to alter the look of the building if it did comply in that sense, and it of course does. The third item was a request by Russell Young, et cetera, for the Young Brothers building expansion. Planning and Zoning recommended as presented, but with the addition of wainscoting around the entirety of the building. City Council did not require the wainscoting, however, did insert that there wanted to be some sort of architectural breakup to the large panels that would extend from ground up to roof line. Either a color code change or the builder's choice, but something that would break up the solid wall. So it's not a big 100 and some foot metal wall. And so rather than a wainscot around that side, it was different breakup method to make it not be just a huge solid wall. Those were the three items that came to council. Are there any questions?
Alex, I have a couple. That last item, was that a requirement from council that there be some type of paneling or division?
I don't believe it was a hard, fast requirement, and the minutes don't reflect it as a requirement, but they are reflected in the minutes. And so I would assume that I don't know how our staff would impose that. I can tell you that the owners were present and were very amenable to that because the way it was presented really didn't incur any additional expense on their part because they could easily just choose varying colors and panels to break up the uniformity of the wall. So they were very amenable to that. I don't know how staff would impose that if you see that, City Administrator, as a mandatory item or as a recommended
I don't
item.
have council minutes in front of me, and I haven't watched, I mean, I was there, but I haven't watched the video, so I don't recall exactly what was said word for word. I can tell you that staff is waiting to receive the plans, and at that time, we're going to go over the plans with the property owner, particularly the rock wainscoting that was on the front that said as required. So we're still going to work with the property owner and trying to make sure there's as much rock and modules of that building as possible. But I don't want to say definitively because I don't recall. at this point. But at this point, I'm still waiting to receive the final plan so that we can go over it and make sure that it complies with what council's direction was and what the concern of the commission was.
So on a related point, you mentioned regarding the Parker property, the issue with the front awning, whatever we call that, and the decision by council not to do anything about that because it wasn't required. If you could clarify this, or maybe this is a subject for further discussion at a different time, but conceptual design plan leaves a lot of opportunity for input from this body regarding design, aesthetics issues, and the like. So it doesn't strike me that it's really a requirement issue in terms of the code, but at the same token, if somebody came in with a polka dot building, we might say, that doesn't really fit. So did you get any sense from the council as a whole on this particular issue? Because it's not really a doesn't meet code issue, as I think we see it.
Can I respond, though? I don't think it was a requirement of the commission, unless I'm wrong, that they modify
I don't remember either.
the front. That was something that was brought up by council.
That's correct.
Yeah, the commission did not have an issue with the front awning.
No, it was not addressed in the commission meeting. I'm saying that there were additional questions, in particular about that one, brought up by members of the council, that and a couple others that were then not acted upon, but were a part of the conversation and discussion that was brought up.
Okay. But it's similar to the.
But with regard to your implied question about whether or not planning and zoning and/or city council has the right to dictate the way a building looks, I think you would get a varying answers to that depending on who you ask. I do know that there is a session that's upcoming in the future, and I can assure you that that question will be addressed in that workshop session, probably certainly by our mayor, as well as I assume our city attorney is going to be present as well to indicate to what extent the requirement can be made to meet the vague outline of design standard and how far you can go to that. I think you have a difference of opinion on members of the council as to how far you can go with that.
And I think you're right, that can be addressed at a later time. I think it'd be helpful, though, that everybody's on the same page in terms of what responsibilities and duties are. Whether people agree or disagree, I think that's the normal part of the process.
Yes.
That will be addressed for sure during the upcoming training session, which is why the mayor wishes to have that as a mandatory meeting, particularly with regard to the design standards. The city attorney is looking at the current design standards and will have definitive conclusions on what is and is not acceptable with the way of motions and action for both the commission and council on that regard.
Okay. Any other questions for Councilman Blue?
And to add on that, I will say that not only are there differing opinions on council, but there's differing opinions of staff too, as to what the commission and council can require. I'm probably on the side that you can require anything you want, but that's that's my opinion. So anyway, the city attorney will review that and look at it and discuss it with y'all.
All right, thank you. Next item is discussion and action on the minutes from the April 2nd meeting, which you found in your packet. If there are any edits, corrections, changes, please bring them to our attention, or we may have a motion.
Chairman,
Joe?
I read the minutes and I move that they be approved as presented.
Is there a second? I'll second. Mike? Motion is to approve the minutes of the April 2nd meeting as presented. All in favor, please signal aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Item 6 tonight is discussion and action on a request by Deborah Keepers for approval of a monument sign and variance to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66, Section 49, that signs, commercial signs, single business use monument type for Helotus Gentle Family Dentistry at 15876 Bandera Road. I know the applicant's here if we have questions, but I'll turn it over to the city administrator to present.
Thank you, Chairman. Staff did review this item, and there were several places where the proposed sign does not, in our opinion, meet code. The first one would be on the number requirement. It says one sign for each street frontage on which the building abuts. We put that, is it clearly compliant? We put no. We put that the proposed sign is a two-faced V-shaped sign facing State Highway 16. The commission may deem the proposed V-shaped sign acceptable, given that the business is located on a corner lot fronting 2 street frontages. So while we recognize that the applicant is certainly entitled to 2 signs, given that they could put one facing Whippoorwill and one on Bandera Road, the proposed sign that they have is V-shaped, and it's all together as one, which would be larger than code would require. And the city has not approved a V-shaped sign in the past because it doesn't meet the technicality of the code. Under landscaping, no landscaping plans were provided, and so a variance would be required for that. That said, staff's recommendation is a bit different than what you would expect. Again, we put that the property fronts Whippoorwill Way and Bandera Road. Consequently, city staff contends that while unusual, the V-shaped sign is at least compatible with the sign code, allowing 1 sign per street frontage. Additionally, staff agrees with the council's October 26, 2017 determination that landscaping should not be required due to the location of the sign. The sign is a considerable distance away from the main structure, and so we do recognize that there would be, although we can't look at financial hardships, there would be some difficulty getting irrigation out to that intersection. I also think that the particular location, being that it's on Whippoorwill Way, is outside of the main commercial corridor of Bandera Road. And so I'm not so sure that additional landscaping would add anything, because if you look at the lot, it's a rather what's the word I'm looking for? Rural setting. So those are staff's opinions. Again, I don't have an issue personally, and it's my opinion when I write this that the V-shaped sign is terrible. I think it's a very nice sign. It's certainly an improvement over what's there, and that's why we made those recommendations.
Great, thank you. Open it up to council comments, questions. We do have the applicant here, if there are. As you look through the material, if you have questions. I might as well start. Can you get the sign up for us, Rick, when you have a chance?
Yeah. Sorry, I have to look.
And my question would be regarding material, or not so much material as in structure. So it's sandstone or something of the sort, if I remember reading correctly.
Yeah, the way I'm looking at it is that it's a rock masonry base of 24 inches, and then there's 4 inches on top.
Is that solid, or what's back? Is there anything behind it, or what are we?
It's my understanding that there are actually aluminum panels that would sit on the top, but the base would be masonry. The applicant is here, so they can address those.
Maybe y'all can, one of y'all, if you put your name and business address on the record. And so what's aluminum panels, is the base solid through? It's hard to tell just from the.
Yes, I'm Brad Ballard, office manager for Deborah Keepers. And the base is going to be a solid with rock, and the sandstone was what they built up. We're going to make it probably, what's more traditional limestone color looking is what the final would actually be.
And then those are aluminum?
And they will be aluminum.
Illuminated or aluminum?
Aluminum.
Okay.
Aluminum, not
Not
illuminated.
illuminated.
Can you go back to the aerial view of the whole property?
The one that was submitted in your packet?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. I know it's probably rough to see
Mr.
from
Rios,
here.
would you mind turning the light off right behind you, please? There's a switch right there. It's probably, thank you.
As you can see, the property's 4 acres, and it's platted, divided in half, actually from lower left up to upper right. The property that's on this side, Dr. Keeper's intentions has always been to eventually sell that, so that's why we're really not wanting to spend the money to put a really expensive sign in there. The placement of the sign is about 30 feet from where the highway is. If you can see, and this doesn't show the other trees that's on the adjacent property, but if you can see, it's anywhere where we put a sign in there is heavily blocked by the forage. It's, if you drive down the road, you can't see it until you get right on it. And that's the purpose of the V shape, or getting that you know, a parallel to the roadway, you definitely wouldn't be able to see the sign at all. You know, they just wouldn't get us any, you know, visibility. Perpendicular, we could do that with just most, you know, monument signs on the highway. But that's 55 mile per hour zone, so we're just, you know, V-shape gives you the best, you know, observance time as you're passing by the sign. It is heavily wooded. Where her building is now, you can see all the trees, and then there's a concrete culvert that goes through there. There's actually a drainage ditch to the left of the building, so there's no place in there to put a sign at all. Actually, when we do sell it, we're probably gonna have to work with the new business, whoever goes in there, you know, to see, you know, to put some kind of signage, you know, for us.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
Other questions for the applicant? Ron?
Yes. Have you considered putting it at a 45-degree angle?
Just one sign at 45
sign?
degree? Well, then you'd miss I mean, 90% of the traffic is outbound, coming from Helotes, going that direction. There still is some that come through it, and the complaints we get is I had to drive all the way up to El Chaparral to turn around because I couldn't see your sign.
I'm thinking that the trees and stuff that are there are gonna block that anyway.
Correct. You don't see it until you get right on it.
You,
About 25% of my patients are from Bandera County, the whole county.
Can you please come up to the microphone? We're,
if you would. Sorry.
Just saying. Well, I would like for the sign to be seen coming from the other direction also, because about 25% of my patients are coming from Bandera County. That's the county I live in.
I was just asking.
No, I know, I'm thinking.
while she's there, question for either one of you.
Go ahead, Joe.
Is the white square you got there is exactly where you're going to put the sign?
No, that was, I took this drawing from 2017 when we were here.
Going to put the sign where it's currently located?
use the red dot on here
And
and
there
you can
was,
show exactly where.
You plan to put it where it's currently located?
This was blocking out the sign that we were looking up there that just said
Yeah.
entrance.
Do you plan to put it where your current sign is located?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It'll be down here.
Okay.
And it's probably one of the slides probably shows the drawing with that current. Actually, they're going to use the current, you know, it's already 4 feet deep in concrete with the current poles, and they're going to build the base around the poles that are already there.
I think if you made that sign where it looks, you don't have two signs there now, it's just one sign, but it's easy to see.
The one back to back.
The one sign you got there now?
Yes. I don't know what the reason, but that's about $7,000 or $8,000 more.
Yeah.
Just to build a monument sign like that.
Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
And with it perpendicular to the road, it would be really tough to, you know, people driving up to see it.
Yeah.
Jason?
So I think, if I could just clarify this point, I think one of your concerns is that if the sign were oriented, what a normal monument sign, two-sided monument sign that was oriented perpendicular to the street, such that the short side were facing the street, that the trees to the, looks like the northwest would block the view of the sign for potential customers coming southbound on Bandera Road from Bandera County area.
Correct.
Is that?
Yes, sir.
And so
And it-
that's the reason why you're sweeping, I mean, it essentially is a monument sign, except you're
It's
splitting
beat
it in
out,
half.
yes,
And
sir.
so the reason you're angling that other half is to get visibility better out past those trees. Is that-
Correct. And I don't have the studies, but there are studies that shown for highway signs be, you know, put at angular for visibility. It's just easier to see. The time, when somebody's driving at 55 miles an hour, and this isn't just, you know, we're not just trying to get somebody so they can see our address, so they can see where we're at. You know, it also helps, you know, to have a sign there that shows a dentist. We do have people that come in all the time and say, oh, I saw your sign, that's why I stopped in and, you know, became a customer. So there's two purposes for the sign. It's one for, so they can find us, but also just for advertising. So you want to get that face time where when they're driving by, they get as much time, which may only be 2.5, 3 seconds.
So let me interrupt you for a second.
Go ahead.
A couple things to point out. So from the city's perspective, the advertising part is not the preeminent part, though we understand your concern. I would point out to the commission a couple things, though, that if you've driven northbound on Bandera, outbound, if you will, the Whipplewell street sign, it's Whipplewell, right?
Correct.
Is not particularly easy to see. Several of those streets in that area, they're not easy to see. Also, remember that this is a divided highway at this point. And that's the other thing to keep in mind if you're thinking in terms of visibility, and if that's an important point. So other questions for the applicant? Michael?
Just clarification, I don't know that it matters too much to the sign, but where was the dividing line, the half, where were you?
It's pretty much exactly in half.
Use the pointer. Oh,
It's the red
wrong
dot.
pointer.
It's pretty much divided half
I see,
right here.
okay.
And I know this, I heard somebody mention that they haven't approved these signs in the past. The V-shaped sign, I know there's several businesses, there's at least 4 in the city that's already has a V-shaped sign. And there's 2 newly erected real estate signs that, further down the street that currently were, been erected fairly recently that are V-shaped, so.
Right. All right, thank you. Oh, one more, yep.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the panel is aluminum.
Yes, sir.
It's obvious it's painted with sign. How does that work as far as weathering and maintaining that look?
It's a vinyl painting. I mean, it's the process that they do is painted on, because that was my question to the sign company is, how's this gonna last up? And they guaranteed it for 15 or 20 years, they told me. However the process is, there's a coating that goes on after it that will prevent it from fading.
So UV resistant or weather resistant, whatever you want to call it?
Yes, sir. I don't know, I can't, there was a technical term that she told me that was what the coating, it's painted and then it has a coating that goes over it. And it's probably on the, it probably says it on it in the.
Yeah, it says a
the sign.
clear UV protective.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
sir, this
one more.
business,
He has a question.
this business that you have, there's no existing sign at this time,
It's the temporary one that we.
which is
we had approved.
V-shaped or?
Yes, sir.
Our original sign has been there since 2006. That was hit by a tractor and we just replaced the sign, but the poles and everything have been there since 2006.
And it's worked for you guys? You've got-
Yes, it's worked great. It's
And
been
it's the
fabulous.
same style of what you're proposing
Yes.
tonight?
Well, obviously, we're changing it to a monument sign, but we're using the poles because they're gonna build around it because they're already in concrete in the ground. But the sign's been up since 2006. You can go to like Google Earth and things and see.
It's right
the
there.
signs.
So I'd remind the commission that, as with many things, when a sign is removed, destroyed in this case, that it does need to come into compliance, and the applicant was granted a temporary sign for some number of
Temporary sign.
months, right?
Actual banner, so is what that is.
Right.
And if you
There's
can-
the actual intersection, right?
Can you rotate that around to the, to see toward Helotes? And if you can see right there, there's also some tree, no, the other direction, sorry.
Talking about this way?
Yeah, right there, you see there's some trees in front of the old propane place.
Yeah.
Also that has the visibility. I mean, we constantly get new customers coming in that said they had to go back down and turn around. And hopefully the continuance of the super street was originally mapped several years ago doesn't happen, or otherwise that whole intersection is gonna be taken out, so,
I have one more question.
yes, sir.
You had mentioned in your presentation that this business is gonna be sold at some
No,
point?
just that 1 acre,
Okay, so
just-
there'll be
just the
another
1 acre.
business at some point
at
that's
some
gonna,
point, yes.
your business
We're-
is there to stay.
But Dr. Keeper's business, she'll be there 10, 12, 15 years, so.
All right, let me stop there. Let's see if we can get a motion out. Thank you. And we can discuss the motion. Mario, would you hit the light for us, please? Thank you. This is item, in your packet, we're on 6 is the number. I remind you that the issues that are non-conforming, if you will, deal with the landscaping and the
Number.
number, thank you, number of signs.
Mr. Chairman, I'll try to do this.
Michael had his hand up first.
Oh,
That's all right.
okay,
Go ahead, Michael.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Go for it.
I move to recommend approval of a monument sign and variances, which I will enumerate, to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66 signs, Section 66-49, commercial signs, single business use, monument type for Helotes Gentle Family Dentistry located at 15876 Bandera Road, Helotes, Texas 78023, more particularly described as BCAD property ID 247068. The variances being no requirement for landscaping and allowing the V-shaped monument sign to incorporate two signs as stated in the package.
I'll second it.
That was Joe. All right, so discussion of the motion. Mike?
I recognize the variances that are, being requested and then in the motion. I think there's not a lot else to work with that is really constructive or useful for the property, given the surrounding vegetation, which the owner has no control over in other properties, and given the divided highway. I think at this point in the development of that area, I think that's probably going to be adequate for them.
Joe, anything to add?
Yeah, I concur. I know the sign, I know where it's going. I concur that that's, what they've done is appropriate for that area.
Other discussion of the motion? Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I generally am not in favor of these, but I think given this situation, I'd rather see them do this than cut down some additional trees and they deserve the visibility, so.
Other comment? I would add that I'm torn on this one. We've had issues with other signage along this corridor where we have been very careful to adhere to code, even on very similar issues regarding divided highway, high speed and whatnot, trees. So there's trade-offs involved between preserving the natural look and feel, ensuring that the sign can be seen. In this day and age, you could also make the argument that most people are driving by GPS with their phones to find locations more than anything else. But at any rate, I think this has been a good discussion, however you vote, and I think council will have in hand all relevant information to act on whatever this recommendation is. But to me, this is not clear-cut, despite the fact that there's good intentions on everybody's part here, I think. So let me go ahead and read it back and then we'll vote. We are moving to recommend approval of the request by Deborah Keepers for approval of a monument sign and a variance to Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66, Section 49, that's signs, commercial signs, single business use, monument type for Helotes Gentle Family Dentistry, 15876 Bandera Road, Helotes 78023, with the conditions that the landscaping requirement, well, that is how it was submitted, but to clarify, to specify the landscaping not be required, and that the sign be permitted to be V-shaped and have a total of two sides. All in favor of that motion, please signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so this will go as a recommendation to City Council on
Thursday.
this week, Thursday. So I encourage you to come back for that. That'll be the final vote. Thank you all.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You guys have a good night. All right, item 7 tonight, which is discussion and action on a request by Trent Stein for approval of a master sign plan pursuant to Code of Ordinances, Chapter 6671, that is signs, permit certificates, and approval required master sign plan, Helotes Oaks Retail Center, a multi-tenant shopping center at 12850 Bandera Road. Turn it over to the city administrator. I gather you're here for that. If we have questions, I'm sure we will.
Thank you. So staff reviewed this item as well, and I'm not going to go over everything that's compliant, just the things that we have concerns about. The first one, the master sign plan application states that it has to include a color scheme and a lettering or graphic style for all of the proposed signage that will be on the building. This does not. It does give general guidelines, but it doesn't go to the specifics of color or lettering and graphic style. The sign dimensions, the applicant is requesting a variance for sign dimensions of 1.25 square feet per 1 linear foot of tenant facade. The current code is 1 square foot of signage per 1 linear foot of tenant facade. So essentially, it's a 25% increase is what they're requesting. And then lastly, the code stipulates that it has to have provisions for leasing information. There were no provisions for leasing information included within the packet. I will tell you that I don't quite know what provisions for leasing information means. So I wasn't really that concerned about that portion of the code. But in looking at this, you know, the original code of ordinances intent was to identify and outline color schemes and lettering and our graphic styles for all shopping centers in Helotes, right? That's very clear by this language. And I think that at one time, wall signage in strip centers could accommodate all having the same color and all having the same font style. But I think in this current day and age where every major retailer has its own trademarked font styles and logos, that it's impractical to say that everything in a shopping center has to be the same color and has to have the same font. I just don't think you're gonna have a center that is productive economically, because most retailers are gonna stick to their guns on having signage that fits their trademarked brand. The other thing with regard to that we looked at is, instead of looking at the color scheme and the lettering style, I think more important should be placed and has been placed on by the commission and council on sign dimensions and locations of signage of wall signage that goes into these master sign plans. And so what I'm mostly concerned about is the variance request for the 1.25 per 1 linear foot of strip center or of tenant facade. With regard to the leasing information, again, I don't know what provisions for leasing information mean. There's no definition in the code for it. But I can tell you that real estate and leasing information is addressed in section 66-46, which is freestanding real estate signs. And typically, these sorts of centers, they put for lease signage out on a freestanding sign along the highway. So and we generally exempt all real estate signage that for properties that are for lease or for sale. Those are my comments.
All right, so before I open it up for questions for the applicant.
Can I?
Yes.
The last thing, we don't make recommendations on these types of variance requests. I mean, it's really up to the discretion of council and to the commission as to whether the 1.25 per 1 square feet or linear foot makes sense. And so the applicant is here and he can address any of those concerns. But we're not making any recommendation on that, other than we believe that the color scheme and lettering should be granted as a variance in this case.
But again, to clarify, why no recommendation on this one as opposed to the previous variance?
This is squarely a policy decision on behalf of the commission and council as to whether they want to allow the additional square footage for visibility, which is what the applicant is requesting. I typically don't give recommendations when it's squarely whether you like it or you don't type things. And it doesn't necessarily it doesn't grossly violate the code enough to where I would make a recommendation for or against. And so that's why.
And to clarify one thing about a master sign plan, whatever is finally adopted or approved by council, individual tenants need to return to here and through the whole process for
No.
their individual signs?
No. At that point, the sign dimensions would be established and they would get approved administratively.
Okay. Making sure of that. All right, let me open it up for questions. We do have the applicant here. I'm gonna start with Jeff first.
I have one question for Rick, though. And this is like other master sign plans that I've seen where it said, note, this master sign plan allows for a tenant to ask for a variance that may allow a change of up to 25% of the sign area. So is this automatically stating, hey, they can go ahead and get the 25%? Or if they come back to staff with a sign that is greater than the 1 square foot per linear footage, asking for that 25%, then at that point, it would have to come back to us, correct?
I don't think so, but.
Well,
what's your-
actually, I didn't realize the applicant included the note on there for the 25%, and so under this case, yes, it would have to come back to council and the commission for a variance. I was under the assumption that they were just blanket asking for 103 square feet and, what was it?
All right, good.
125 square feet, 69 and 45 square feet respectively. So with that note, yes, they would have to come back.
Thank you, Jeff.
Sorry about that.
Mike?
Mr. Chairman, I do notice right above what we were just discussing on the note, on the drawing, it does say in there, it has dimensions that agree with the code.
They would have to
It's
comply
1 square foot for 1 linear foot of frontage. So that part, they're already within the code. And remember, talking up here a little bit earlier, where the code allows for 25% given, unusual lettering, unusual words, that type of thing. So we don't have that information right now, so what would be the basis to give them 25% more right now? Based on that.
Okay, point taken.
You do remember
Ron?
Mr. Chairman, on one of the other master sign plans, it was stated that that was it, they were not allowed to ask for the 25%. You recall that, Rick?
That was actually for the Abizo development where Dunkin' Donuts is, and they had almost the same identical note on that one. So they could ask for the
But didn't-
25%, but they would have to come back to the
Right.
commission.
But the one across the street
Across the
did
street
not.
did not have that written in there.
That is correct. But that does not necessarily mean that they can't ask for a variance in the future.
But isn't that why we turned down the pizza place, because it was written that he couldn't do it?
That is correct.
So this is why this is here, to let them do this, be able to at a later date if necessary.
They would be able to do that anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's in the code. Didn't know about the
I
note.
don't know why we have gotten onto this 25% thing. I think I actually do know why, but I'm not going to talk about it here. But the code is very clear that anybody can ask for a variance of the sign code whenever they want to, as long as they pay their fee and turn in their variance application. And so I think that it's just meant to make it easier for the tenants to get that 25%, and it certainly would make it administratively easier if there wasn't the note that they had to ask for a variance and y'all just approved a blanket master sign plan that allowed the 25% period.
Okay.
That would then be just administratively approved. And so I don't know where we're getting stuck on this 25% thing, but all I know is that right now they're asking for the 25% variance.
I thought you
It
put on
seems
there for
fairly
information.
useless if you're automatically going to go for 1.25 anyway.
So, well, let's take it one at a time. I mean, there's efficiencies that come with having it adopted all at once, but then there's also the ability for the commission to exert some oversight of whatever's being proposed. So as it's written here, and as Jeff pointed out, it requires the tenants, when there's a sign to be prepared and put up, to come back if they wish to exceed that. Now, that's just about the size issue. Color and lettering as it is right now, we have no information. If you read the code, as I understand it, it doesn't even specify anything about rationale. I mean, you gave us what the sort of thought process was or the interpretation of it, but the
That's
code
my-
doesn't actually spell it out.
No, that's my opinion of what the thought
Right.
process was, and that is indicative of shopping centers
Makes
in,
sense.
before the 2000s, when everybody had their own logos and their own font styles and all of that. I think it's very old school to have a shopping center with all green lettering. Let's just put it that way.
Right. So let me open it up for others for questions for the city staff or for the applicant. I'll just keep talking. So maybe the applicant could come up, tell us your name and address for the,
Thank you. My name is Trent Stein. I'm the owner and developer across the street here at 12850 Bandera Road.
and there are, is it right now envision two?
What's that?
Two tenants, is that?
Yeah, it's only going to be two, unless I divide that in half, but I don't think I'm going to, unless I just can't get it leased for some reason. So, and, the reason is we just don't know what I don't know the tenants. I happen to have a tenant with Communicare, and we have their dimensions and all that stuff, because my sign company is doing their sign. But for the other tenant, I don't know. So, it's speculative. So that's the whole, and I don't want to that's why we're asking for the extra. We don't necessarily need it. I don't know. Obviously, if it's going to slow things down, it's not the end of the world. We're still going to have enough exposure. It's a good spot, sign, and the building's big enough. It's got a big facade. So, but I just don't know what's going to go on that side, and would love the tenant and retailers always want, to have the options.
Right.
So,
Questions for the applicant?
My question is, why do we not know the color scheme or the lettering information at this time if there's already a tenant there?
I have their, I mean, we have their drawings in there, I think, don't we? I don't know. I don't have what you're seeing, but I know they have a sign design. I've seen it. It should be in the packet. If it's not, I don't-
Talking about the Communicare sign?
yeah,
Yeah, that would not be included in this because this is just the master sign
okay,
plan.
exactly. So
So,
I guess I'm a little confused too, but, of this whole process, but,
so the Communicare sign is essentially white and blue.
yeah, it's white and blue. And it's, it's not, I don't know if they've seen it. I'm sure y'all have seen it. I don't know.
But again, that white and blue is their trademark.
Their trade, not mine. I'm not gonna,
Copyrighted logo. I mean, their logo is essentially their name.
their name with a
In a
capital
cer-
C.
yeah.
Capital C, then a capital C with care, and then, so, but,
Ron?
I guess this might go, correct. Did we approve the monument sign?
Yes,
monument signs up and,
that was approved several months
Okay,
ago.
I just didn't recall.
Any other comments or questions?
My other question, does the current tenant, Community Care, I'm sorry,
Communicare,
Communicare, they need the 1.25?
I don't even think they're asking for it. I don't know that they do or do not. I don't think they, I don't have their drawing in front of me, so I don't think it, I don't know. I think that we are here asking for the 1.25, so we don't have to come back and just in case someone needs the 1.25 is my understanding. Is that correct? Yeah, because we
Well,
don't,
there's two-
we don't want to come back and do this all over again, because it slows down everything else, because they're
Well-
already ready to put their sign up, because it helps their business, and I'm like, okay, well, let me go try to get this taken
So
care
just to
of.
be clear, though, we're talking total of two tenants, right?
Correct. I
Communicare
mean, three
plus-
potentially, but I don't see three. I
Right.
can't, again, speculative.
Rick?
So, but no more than three, but I don't,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
okay.
Anything else for the applicant?
you.
I guess I just have a question
Good.
that you are asking for something that's different from this master sign plan then?
We are asking for the size.
You're asking for a blanket,
Correct.
25% automatic
Correct.
variance?
That's just for, because we don't, just,
That is not stated in this master sign plan.
it's, we were on the assumption that we can get the variance for the extra 25%.
Yeah, I mean, I think
That's,
that
it's
is
very
what,
confusing. So at this
Hang on,
point,
hang on a second, go ahead, Rick.
if that is what the applicant is requesting, and I think you're asking for just a blanket
Correct.
variance so that you can come back and have a future sign administratively approved with that additional 25%, correct?
if they need it, yes.
Then that would be, that's fine. I mean, that's what they're asking for, but the note on the master sign plan would need to be removed. The note specifically says, for your information, it says the master plan allows for a tenant to ask for a variance that may allow a change of up to 25% of the sign area. The wording to ask for a variance means that they would still have to go through the whole process in front of the commission
Okay.
and council, and so you want to remove that note.
Yes, I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
I need to get this done today. Or,
Other comments, questions? Okay, thank you.
all right, you bet. Thank you.
Motion to discuss.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Make a motion
It's a
to.
recommendation.
Or, yeah, make a recommendation to deny the request by Trent Stein for approval of master sign plan pursuant to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66 signs, Section 6671 permits. Certificates and approval required. Master sign plan of Helotes Oaks Retail Center, multi-tenant shopping center located at 12850 Bandera Road.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? Okay, Jeff, discuss it if you have anything for this.
Mr. Chairman, I just, we have city code here, and I think that the variance that, I would prefer seeing anything that needs a variance, and approve it at commission and council.
Michael?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I agree. I think to grant a blanket variance without seeing something beforehand is risky. Not that this is a bad thing, but it sets a precedent. I think we are assuming more risk than perhaps we know that we're taking. I'd rather have the process work, and to grant to grant a blanket variance really negates the reason for having a 25% option to begin with. That extra 25% should be based on need that can be addressed and talked about and demonstrated, rather than say, well, I need 25%. Well, what's to say you don't need 50% at that point? It kind of negates what the reason is for having a process to get another 25% square footage.
Mr. Chair, I concur with Commissioners Mike and Jeff. I admire and respect the business owner being here tonight and with the spirit of trying to get it all done and that kind of thing, being proactive. But at the same time, I feel like there's a process and we need to be transparent and we need to make sure that we are clear with both sides of what's being approved, especially since it's in a very prominent area of Helotes and it's right across the street from City Hall. I think we need to, it doesn't really matter where it's located in Helotes, but that is a prime spot. But I think we need to follow the process and make sure that we're transparent when we're doing these.
Jason?
Yeah, I agree. My concern is less about this particular development than about the precedent set. You know, you can envision a much larger shopping center asking for the same thing, citing historical precedent, and, you know, we could get, you know, a Walmart-sized shopping center with the same rights. And I don't think that we want to see that here.
Yeah,
May I ask a
25%
question
is a big
of-
number, perhaps.
May I ask perhaps an amendment? I don't know. Hang on a second. If the issue, as I'm hearing it, that people have concern about is the size issue, I take it the coloring and the lettering has not been a concern. It wasn't part of the motion.
I think that is a
But
concern.
hang on a second. If it's size, could we not recommend approval of this and simply exempt or require that it conform to code regarding size, as opposed to denying the whole thing?
Mr. Chair, that was exactly what I was just going to ask, was if I could change mine to approve it as written with that note still being on there.
Well, I mean, you could clarify what it is you want, so, what the commission
I
wants.
would have.
So, but I don't want to presume, hang on a second, there's a motion out there, so who made the motion? You made the motion, and you seconded it. So, if, and it's only if, you don't have to agree with this, but if that's something you could support, then I think it would make sense to withdraw the
You
motion.
would, you would amend the motion.
Well,
and then-
could he just withdraw the motion? I would withdraw it, because we're
Well,
talking
I
about
think you have a
moving from
motion on the
denial.
floor. You have to do something with it.
We could vote it down and then take another one.
Well, no, you amend, the person that made the motion has the choice, has the option to amend the motion. I would either agree or not agree to the amended motion and go from there.
Fair enough.
You can do it either way.
Or you can, right, that's fine. Hold on, before any of that happens, so
It's clear.
Jason, then Mario.
Is your name Robert?
Just a brief comment to the applicant.
Is your
You know,
name Robert?
We meet
Is
once
your
a
name
month.
Robert?
We're pretty good about
What's
this
your-
when there's a hardship or a difficulty or some concern why they need the extra room. You know, we've been fairly generous, I think, in many cases where there's an issue. And again, we meet once a month. It's pretty quick to get past us to have this brought before us. So I don't see the delay as being a huge, setback for some potential tenant.
Could you have something?
And I
Mario?
concur. I mean, it's one of the things I wanted to share with the business owner as well, is that you talked about multiple tenants, and each tenant is unique in their branding. And I think that knowing that information here in this room really helps if we do need to make adjustments like what we're talking about tonight. So again, I think following the process is the best way to do it.
Jeff, do you want to amend your motion?
Well, I don't know if amending it would be as good as withdrawing it.
Amending is just, it's clearer, I think.
But then I would, because I would amend
You
to
can-
approve it as written.
You can withdraw your motion, and then as long as,
As long as he agrees.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I
okay,
believe,
I'll
I'm sorry,
withdraw.
I'm not as good as, I think you can withdraw your motion. I would just say if you agree to it, and then you can make a new motion.
Okay.
Would you like to withdraw
I'll
your motion?
withdraw.
Mike, are you okay
Robert.
with that? All right.
All right.
Try again.
Motion has been withdrawn.
Motion has been withdrawn.
Okay.
You want to try again?
I'll try again, yeah. I'll recommend approval of the request by Trent Stein for approval of master sign plan pursuant to municipal code and ordinances, chapter 66 signs, section 6671, for property located at 12850 Bandera Road as written.
And would you just clarify, when you say as written, as it relates to?
With the
this-
note, with the side note saying that each tenant must come back for the 25% variance.
To be explicit about it.
Would we have,
Michael, second?
would we have to make a note about this 25% here on A, B?
No, he's referring to that.
I know, but do we need to note that they to be voided?
25% variance.
No,
So-
because it says with a 25% variance, so I think you're fine.
According to the code, because that picture is only a picture and a
Okay,
note.
hang on a second though. So the motion is to recommend approval as submitted, including the note that
Tenant must ask for.
requires tenants to return 4 size that would exceed code. Okay. First, comment, discussion, either of you beyond what we've said?
Mine's just a little bit, I guess, academic. I don't care about the note on the drawing, because what we're trying to do is follow what the code is, and with that code, there's a process we follow.
Right.
I think, so it's immaterial what's on the note. That's not our code. But either way.
Anyone else for discussion on this? All right, so let me read it back, make sure you got it. So the motion is to recommend approval of the request by Trent Stein for master sign plan pursuant to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66, Section 71, that is signs, permits, certificates, and approval required master sign plan for Helotes Oaks Retail Center and Multi-Tenant Shopping Center at 12850 Bandera Road, Helotes 78023, explicitly requiring that tenants return to ask for a variance if the size will exceed what is permitted by code,
Yes. As written on the note.
and as written on the note
Yes.
with the application. All in favor of that motion, signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that's what's gonna go forward on Thursday. So you have opportunity to come and sort of state your case to those guys and go from there. Thank you for coming in, appreciate it. Thank you. That brings us to the end of our agenda tonight.
Mr. Chairman, may I
Ron.
make a motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
That's second.
All in favor, signal aye. Opposed, we stand adjourned at 7:53 PM.